All right, here we are, another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies.
And good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Peter. We are on episode number 307. And the title of today's episode is Common Reasons Rookie Kill Deals Using Creative Real Estate Scripts.
Oh, jeez.
Scripts are supposed to, and here's the description, by the way. Scripts are supposed to give us an unfair advantage when talking about creative real estate to sellers. But why do these secret words and sentences seem to be so hard to use and not always work? More important, why are others able to use these words and sentences and make monster deals? What are you doing or not doing to keep you from doing the amount of deals you need to support your desired outcome or lifestyle? If you want to be a highly successful dealologist, you need to do what highly successful dealologists do. And in this laid-back podcast, you're about to hear what your possible stumbling blocks are and how you can remedy them quickly. Plus, I promise you, it is never as tough or difficult as you think. And once you untangle this in your own mind, you will be much better off when you have your seller's undivided attention and ready to talk about how much our creative real estate transactions can help them, their sale, and most often the life they desire once the house deal is handled. So once again, we have to do some housekeeping. So there's a link in the chat that I actually put what we're talking about today. There's some scripts in there. I even put in there a calculator so you can figure out how to use deals.
Oh, nice.
What deals, how to make offers, actually, not which deals, but what offer. 3 common offers that we use. And its values a couple $100 easily. And it's in the link is in the description of wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast. Also, please make sure you subscribe to our channel or subscribe wherever you're listening to us. And make sure you like us if you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube or whatever channel or whatever podcast platform you're listening to us. And don't forget to leave us some sort of a testimonial. You could go do that at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Top right-hand side, there's a testimonial there, or just leave us a review with, wherever you're watching us or listening to us, whatever platform you're using, just leave us a review so we can see whether we're being good boys or not being good boys.
Yeah. What do you think, folks?
Your opinion counts.
For us, that's like the market.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this with the house, I want to do that with the house. Well, what does the market say?
Yeah.
Not always up to you.
It's our
world
report
around
card. Our report card.
Yeah.
All right. Tough subject today. What to say or not to say to sellers so we get deals. Not pay too much and help the seller so they follow us around like a puppy when you have their favorite treat. This is what all of us would like. To hypnotize our sellers and make it so as soon as we clap our hands, they sign the paperwork and we have an $800 million deal and never have to work for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, we want the same skills we have with girls.
Well, in that case, I'm in trouble.
We're both in trouble.
All right, so let's start off with defining what I think a script is and why you should use them. So just for a sake of I guess, of putting you on the spot and using it as contrast, what do you think the reason of a script is, Peter?
The reason,
Yeah.
well, I think the reason is to keep us on track when we're talking to somebody. So we actually stay in some kind of control of finding out what we need to do, and see instead of the other person throwing us all around conversation like, oh, you want to buy my house? Let me tell you about my house. I got a new roof, and the furnace is only 3 years old, and I live there. And they go into this whole sales pitch, and if you're not careful, you're sitting there with your finger in your nose waiting for something to happen.
So this podcast is going to be as exciting for you as our listeners.
Oh, good. I'm glad I came then.
Because I used to think that too, but I don't anymore, which is why I'm doing this podcast.
Okay, well, at least I think, learned something.
I think, yeah, and I'm not trying to make you wrong or anything. I'm just saying that's what the reason why I wanted you, because I suspected that's how you felt, because we haven't talked about this. Well, I make comments about it on occasion, but we've never fully talked about scripts and what I think we should do with them.
Yeah, and we've gone like script down to the last sentence, and then like let's just talk to the person and just ask a few questions, and then maybe we use it's going back and forth like a pendulum, like too much, too little. So I'm actually very curious to see what you think today.
Good. So my definition of a script is a pre-organized set of arranged words or sentences set up before you need to use them or say them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's pre-organized sentences or words set up before you need to use them.
Mm.
I mean, think about it. All the major actors that you can think of, and you think of any of them, would they make the amount of money that they made if they didn't have a script? If they didn't have, and with them, it's not just the words, it's the emotion, it's the body language, it's the it's the scene around them. Like how do they induce or add to the scene that they're in?
Sure.
Right. And our scripts are no different. How do we induce or how do we add to the purpose of the seller? Like how do we add to the perpetual motion of them wanting to be with us?
Yeah.
Right. So how do we add to that? And here's a shocking truth. All sellers are the same. Once you hear the dozen or so different situations, they're all the same.
Yeah.
You just categorize them. They say them differently. They animate them differently. They dramatize them differently. They add drama to them differently. And it's always the same thing. Right? It's always the same thing. The point of doing this is to have calculated sentences that will give you the best result desired for all that are involved. So my drum that I beat, which the drum that I beat the hardest is your deals should be it's your deals. A perfect deal to me, which is a good thing to tell people, is what do I consider a perfect deal? Yeah. A perfect deal for me is the greatest good for the greatest number involved.
Yeah.
That's the perfect deal for me. Does it mean that it means it works for me. It means it works for my seller. It means it works for my private lender if I'm using one. It means it works for my buyer. It means it works for my attorney. It means it works for my accountant. It works for my family. It works for everybody all the way around.
It works for the town.
The city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly.
They don't need vacant houses or unsold houses or,
The neighborhood. Absolutely. Yeah. The neighbors.
How many times we had neighbors go, oh, you buying that? Oh, thank God.
Right. All right. So now with this in mind, here's why rookies make the biggest mistakes and kill a lot of deals when talking to sellers.
Mm-hmm.
They use the scripts backwards.
Ooh. Wow.
Which is what you were just talking about. It's like They use it to set the pace of the conversation. They use it to keep score of this is what I have to get done. They use it to try to provoke some emotion from the seller. Right? So they're in front of the seller instead of behind the seller. Right? So they're using, and this is why I'm bringing this up, because I do this and don't realize it, and then I get kudos, and I get, like, oh my God, I can't believe how well you do that, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in the coaching group, so we're in June now of 2022. For the last couple months, I think almost 3 months now, I've added a feature to my coaching group, and 2 or 3, usually about 3 times, between 3 and 4 times a week. Sometimes it's twice, but most of the time it's 3 or 4 times a week. I actually do live closing calls for between 60 and 90 minutes. It's usually 90 minutes. And I get on our software, which is REI Replay. And I do it on Zoom. Everybody's on Zoom. And the folks that are on the call, which is usually anywhere from 2 to 6 people. It's not usually a lot of people. And I put the screen on, and they watch me work. They watch, like, what am I looking at? What screens do I open? Where do I find the leads in my REI Replay? How do the leads get there? All that kind of stuff. And then either in REI Replay or on my cell phone, I just dial the number and I call the seller. And they listen.
Yeah.
So now this is direct feedback for me because they're listening to me. So when I get done, I'll get off the phone. They're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe," and I just started to see this contrast that I'm talking about right now. Okay, because it's happening right in front of me. And so this is exactly what I'm talking about. Rookies use scripts backwards. And here's what I mean. Let's say the seller conversation has 2 parts. It has a question and it has an answer.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. And this question and answer could be 2 ways. Like a 2-way communication.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes the seller has the question and the investor answers it. And sometimes the investor has a question and the seller answers it. So it's like this back and forth, right? I can't give a good analogy of a physical thing that goes back and forth like that, but it's like.
Well, how about throwing a baseball around the backyard with your dad in the morning on Saturday?
Good. That's good. Yeah.
You have to send it. He has to receive it. And he gives a little nod, got it, or like, "Ow, that was fast. Ouch, that hurt." And then you throw it back.
That's a good point. So sometimes you're throwing, sometimes you're catching.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So here's my point. all rookies feel like they need to be scripted on their questions. What to say, how to say it, the flow or sequence of the question, etc. Just like what you were saying in your definition of a script. It's to guide you through the transaction.
Yeah.
Okay. But in fact, that is the trouble. And it's taken me, I don't even know that I fully understand this because I'm still working, because it seems like it's just way too simple.
Oh.
Right? So, see, what you need scripts not on your questions, but on the seller's responses.
You said that a few times, maybe the last year. And I swear to God, the first few times you said that, I like, wait a minute. I don't think I even get that, which is stupid because I should know about communication for, a few reasons. But it's absolutely right. It's not so much what you ask the guy or what he answers. It's like, what are you going to do with the answer?
Right.
Right.
So here's what happens. And to your exact point, see, all humans freeze they freeze, which means they don't move, or they say no when they don't understand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, how do you respond to a seller's question is vital, right? For a few reasons. One, they want to know you understand them and are on the same page as them.
Right.
We call this non sequitur. So, do you know what that means?
Yeah, I do. So I'm trying to. You have to continue to explain. Well, non sequitur is like sequence, something going in order. So non sequitur is you ask somebody, "Hey, are you hungry?" And they say, "Is your shoe untied?" Or I think they just say something else like, "What are you talking about?" And they're not on topic. They go off somewhere.
Right. So non sequitur is so we're talking about the few reasons why seller questions are so vital. So number one, they want to know you understand them and are on the same page as them. If you're not, you will sound non sequitur to your seller because they're like, why is he talking about that? Like, for example, right, that they want to get all cash, and now you're talking about payments.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about renting. Let's do it that way. They're talking about renting.
Yeah.
That to them is non sequitur. It's like, why is he talking about renting? I want to sell my house. I don't want to rent it.
Yeah, you're not only not on the same page, but I think of it more of like when you're talking to somebody, you know how they look at you and they say, "Are you on my side or against me? I
Right.
want to do this. I want to go have steak, and you want fish."
Right.
So they say something, and they're going to wonder, "Are you supporting me or against me?" It's just one or the other.
Right. So what I'm saying is, and I'm not going to get in this complex today, but you want to use a bridge communication. You want to get from them wanting to sell to talking about renting.
Yeah.
You need to bridge that gap between those two non sequitur. I'm sorry for using the language I'm using, but it's the only way to explain it. So you have a buyer and a seller, you have a seller and an investor talking. The investor asks a question, how much do you want? And the seller says, I want 200,000. And you say, well, I can give you 1,500 a month. So did the seller actually think you understood him?
Oh, hell no.
Right. And you jump topics. So it was non sequitur, which means it was not in sequence because you jumped sequence. Either you went too quick or you didn't have a bridge communication like, okay, so you want 200,000. And this is what I do. For that amount of money, I'd have to do a rent to own. Have you ever considered that? And that's the bridge communication to be able to walk me into, well, I don't know, I've never heard of that. Or no, I don't want to rent. And you'll be like, how come?
Right. But go back a second. That was really so amazingly correct. When somebody says something that you don't want to do, you don't say, no, I don't want to do that. You say, yes, I could do that, but this way. So you didn't even say no to that. You said, yes, this way. That is so much better than saying, no, I can't do that.
So this is good, Peter, because the most vital part of this whole podcast, as far as I'm concerned, is all humans freeze, don't move, even say no when they don't understand. So when I hear a no, which is why I want to give 5 no's, I'm trying to figure out what they don't understand. So my no's are they don't understand. That's why they're saying no. And I continue to delve in, wanting to know what they don't understand. Or why they're saying no. Like, well, my grandmother rented and they tore the house up.
Right.
And that could be a reason for no. Well, they don't understand the rent-to-own method that we're doing.
Yep.
Okay. So this is very profound right now. I don't want to do this. So So, anyways, a few. So we're back into a few reasons why it's so important or so vital to how you respond to sellers' questions. So, number one, which we just covered, they want to know you understand them and are on the same page as them.
Yep.
Number two, you have their interest first, and not just there to make money off of them. Right? Now, that's the world of wholesale. That's why it's so hard to find a wholesale deal, because those people don't care if you're making money off of them. They just they're in such pain, or they don't want the property, or whatever, that they're just willing to just give it away. Okay.
Yeah.
Number three, they're expecting you are the expert and need to guide them or inform them, so they feel like they are making a good decision based on their situation.
Yep.
Right. So I'm going to read these again because this is important. How you respond to a seller's question is vital because of these three reasons. And there's more, but we're going to just use these. One, they want to know you understand them and are on the same page as them.
Okay.
Two, you have their interest first and not just there to make money from them.
Definitely.
Or off of them. Sorry about my throat today. Three, they're expecting you to have they're expecting that you are the expert and need to guide them or inform them so they feel they are making a good decision based on their situation.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But the number one rule, if you have more great answers than sellers have questions, the stress goes out of the job of convincing them, plus your self-confidence soars.
That's really good.
Okay.
And you don't get great answers off staring at a script. I think you get those by listening to the person and helping them.
So let me read it again. You have more if you have more great answers. I didn't say questions.
Yeah.
If you have more great answers than sellers have questions, the stress goes out of the job of convincing them, plus your self-confidence soars.
Yeah.
But I should have probably continued with my thought before, because now I don't remember what I was going to tell you before I read that. Hang on one second.
Let's see what your script says, Bill.
Yeah. Okay, it's gone. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you're always pushing in the direction of not just standing there blabbing at people, giving a seminar, but really listen and help them some way. And, that's easy to say, but you need to hear all these little details that you can point out. And you and I have been in a few houses the last few days talking to people. So it's more and more real the more you do it, and you see better. And maybe we went from somebody who didn't know much at all about selling his house and what to do with it to somebody who owns lots of properties and knows what to do, but still wants to see if we're going to buy it. So we've seen everything, the whole spectrum.
Yeah, so I want to clarify what you just said. So what Peter's saying is, in the last week, we've been in 3 or 4 properties, and we had one guy that knew nothing about selling a house, and then we had one guy that had almost 100 properties. So that's what Peter's talking about. So, all right, another reason rookies kill deals is because of mindset, right? Which follows along with having answers. The professional dealologist knows there is nothing as important as the time he or she spends directly interacting with question and answers, talking about a real estate transaction. Now, I didn't put this in my notes, but Jim Camp, in the book No, which is an amazing book on negotiation. It's the only book you should ever read on negotiation. Okay, because he was an FBI negotiator, I think.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, he was like the best, right? And he's dead now, but his book is still alive, and his family keeps his legacy going. We talked about this in other podcasts. It's blank slating. We were talking about this about yesterday when we were together, the day before when we were talking about a phone conversation I had in the car with one of my coaching clients, right? And how when they were talking to me, there's certain things that they wouldn't do.
Right.
So they were having trouble with listening to me saying, here's what you should do.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was doing, and you brought this up because, it's like the way I was negotiating was, here's the cash offer, which is really low, but then here's the owner finance offer that's really high. And using them as a comparative close or a comparative sale.
Yeah.
So you give them what we used to call the cold ice water dip. In other words, you shock them with the cash number. And then you come back in with, well, if you're willing to take this number, if you want this number and you're willing to take payments, then we can do that.
Right.
So what I'm saying here is blank slating is not inducing or injecting what you would do or not do when you're in the transaction. You go into the deal completely clean-minded, and your objective is to just find out what the seller is thinking and feeling.
Right, because what do we do instead? We think you get some information. You might have some data before you start the conversation, and you think you know what the person would want to do or what you would want to do, and you go in very biased, which is why when we're in a car to go into a place and not something a house that I've been working on, I don't show Bill like anything sometimes, like absolutely zero lately. I'll show you the sheet I have, but you don't even ask for the sheet lately. I just let them go. And then when you need some data, I show you the sheet. What's the number for that? Okay, good. And you don't walk in there with a preconceived idea of what you're going to do, because how would you know that until you talk to the person? But we do that.
This is actually a phenomenon that I just recently realized. Actually, I've realized the phenomenon, but I've never named it.
Oh, we have a name now. Oh, boy.
Well, I don't have a name now, but I'm going to tell you what it is. I do need to name it.
Okay.
But here's what happens is, and this is what happens to one of my partners, right? This happens to everybody. They look at the deal the way I taught them to mathematically look at the deal.
Right.
And it's like, and he'll come to me and say, this is a perfect subject to. Or he'll send me a text, I have a subject to client.
Except the client doesn't know it yet.
Right.
Everybody knows it except the person.
Right. This is to be unfair and kind of gross, and sorry, ladies, but just to be funny, it's like premature ejaculation.
Okay, thank you.
It's not going to get you there.
I'm taking my earbuds out right now.
Right. It's kind of like it doesn't satisfy everybody.
She hasn't even said yes to the date yet.
Yeah.
You're already married with children. Come on, take it easy.
Yeah. So the point is that I know in the back of my head, or when I'm talking to somebody, all these deal structures, and the craziest thing that drives me nuts is how simple this is and how much time we have to talk about it and convince the rookies or our listeners or my coaching clients or my students or my book readers or my meetup people or all the things that I do, how much time I have to spend to convince them how easy it is, because they don't believe it.
Yeah, but you're asking people to do something that's impossible, Bill.
Yeah.
You're asking us to listen to people with an open mind.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm going to come back to this in a minute. A very common myth that most rookies have is you need to have technical real estate answers to these questions. Which is the paralysis of analysis phenomenon. Too much unimportant information clogs up the activity.
Yeah.
And not enough technical answers to sellers' questions is never the reason for not doing deals. So there's a couple things I'd like to just sidetrack here, like take a diversion, you know me with my diversions. Right? So first of all, I have observed, mostly with my online business and support tickets, that too many rookies are studying and studying and studying, trying to learn everything because they have an expectation that they're going to talk to somebody in 20 minutes or a half an hour and buy the house. So they're trying to stuff the whole industry into a half hour, maybe an hour conversation, and thinking that it's just going to be bing, bang, boom. Now, 10 years ago, it was like that. Nowadays, with the internet and all the stuff we got going on in the world, most people think we're a scam. So we have to work through that. We have to prove ourselves. So the number one thing that we teach is that your words have to match your actions. That's the definition of trust. So you need to let that cultivate. You need to let that percolate, right? Now, that's only because we're in a seller's market and the seller has more than one choice of how they can sell their property or get their equity. Right?
Yeah.
When that changes and it's a buyer's market and they're having trouble, they put their house in the market for 90 days and nobody inquires, then it changes the other way for somebody like us, and it doesn't take as long to convince them or do deals with them. Okay.
Right.
All right, now watch this. So that means that the student is constantly gathering data so they can have the answer in a 30-minute phone conversation and impress the seller.
Yep. Sure.
Right?
Yep.
When one of the things you can do, which by the way, let me hang on one second. You can read a book called, it's from Ben Settle. It's called Persuasion Secrets of the World's Most Charismatic and Influential Villains. It's an odd name. It's an odd name. But here are some of the topics. A villain without a mission is like a man without testicles. Annihilate your neediness. Selfishly pay yourself first. Secure your screw you fund. Ruthlessly knock people off their pedestals. Execute your inner nice guy. The point in all these is that what happens is, and I said this to you yesterday about something I'm working on. What happens is you're trying to get them to come into your world.
Right.
Accept the way you do things. It's much better for them to come into your world, for them to step into your world and learn how things are done, than for you to step into their world and try to adapt all of your methodology to their world.
Yep.
So that's a very profound statement. I'm not going to embellish on it, but I want to go back to the data. Last podcast in episode 306, I talked about the triangle in senior data or important information. Right? So what happens is, I'm very significant right now, but what happens is if you have a triangle, the tip of the triangle is the most important piece of datum that holds all the data in the triangle.
Yep.
So let's say we're going to do a slot deal. The slot deal is a triangle, and there's a datum on the top of that triangle that keeps it together.
Mm-hmm.
That datum is the seller is willing to rent to own for 2 years before they get cashed out.
Yeah.
Or the datum right below that is they owe too much money and they're going to come to closing and they don't want to do that with money. Right? So this is going to come together in about 2 minutes because I'm going to keep moving, okay?
Sure.
So does that make sense? So the paralysis of analysis is set in because the rookie doesn't know the difference between average, nonchalant, everyday information and the information he or she needs as a dealologist to make the deal.
Right.
So there's only 4 datums that you need to make a deal. There's 4 pieces of information you need to make a deal. And everything else is insignificant. Okay? All right, let me keep reading here because I'm going to get to that in a minute. In fact, all we know, let me try that again. We all know my skill level on the topic of creative real estate, and I work very hard at talking to people about deals at a 4th grade level. So it's like I feel, and this is going to be bizarre to our listeners, I feel handicapped knowing so much. And rookies feel handicapped for not knowing enough. So a rookie wants to learn everything before talking to a seller. And here I am telling you, I want to forget everything I know when talking to a seller and keep it real and simple.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have a lot of people that wish they could have my talent. And I'm like, you don't need my talent because honestly, and Peter, you know, we're in houses. How much of my talent gets flaunted? How much of my talent is in the conversation? How much of what now, when we leave and you ask me questions, I get all geeky, but that's only because you're asking questions. Those questions did not come up in my mind when I was talking to the person.
Oh, see, I think those are in your mind. You're not saying because you're just doing your calculations, but you're absorbing the data and you're listening. And you know, if there's like, gee, I'm not sure what to do next. It's just like, what question do we ask to find out what we need to know to move ahead? But it's really, really customer oriented.
Right.
You say customer service, you know.
But here's my point: is how much of a script do I use?
Nothing.
But I am using a script. And I'm going to show that to you in a minute.
Okay.
So what's happening is what you're saying is I'm talking about being real and simple.
Yeah.
Let me give you some major talking points that should be done without any script.
Okay.
So here are the 4 major datums. You've heard me say this 1,000 times, but I want you to understand why I say this. So number 1, you need to talk about their price.
Yeah.
How they came up with that number. What they will do when they get it. What they will do if they don't get it.
Yeah.
So in my head, I know I cannot, I will not, I refuse to, I will not do a deal or talk about a deal anymore unless I have these 4 things. And the first thing is their price. And the discovery portion of this is how do they get their price? So each one of these questions or each one of these datums have its own discovery.
You know, I finally figured that out with you recently because, you know, we would have scripts that have lots of discovery and then maybe we ask those questions at the end. But it looks like it's very natural to just ask the question and then just find out more about it so you can find out what you need to know about just that.
Okay, good. So I say to you, Pete, what are you asking for the house?
Oh, I want to 225.
Okay, good. So how did you come up with that number?
Well, the guy down the street sold his for 215, and you know my house is a little bit better. It's got more amenities and stuff, you know, painted up nice. So I figured 225.
Okay, so did he tell you he sold it for 215, or did you see it somewhere, or how did you know that he actually sold it for 215?
Yeah, it was 215.
Well, how
I
do you
know the guy. I talked to him.
He told you?
Yeah, it's Tommy down the street. We talk once in a while, and we've been kind of sharing stories about the house and what are you doing, what am I going to do? Yeah, so it was 215.
Okay. And how long did it take him to sell it?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. So you feel like your house is in better shape than his? That's why you're coming up with that number?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
Now see what just happened there?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the question, how much do you want for your house, Pete?
Yeah, you're right.
The discovery was when you answered me, I asked more questions. The discovery stage is in your responses and me being inquisitive so I know where your head is at.
Mm-hmm. So do you think people have trouble just asking questions because, I don't know, they feel nosy or they're not supposed to ask? Is there a problem? What's the problem?
Problem is that rookies feel like they're underutilized. They feel like they're undertrained, and they give up their own human skills, and they're not inquisitive enough, and they're spending too much time thinking about showing off to the seller, like, look how smart I am. And they're not in communication with the seller. They're not in two-way communication. They throw the ball, but when the ball comes back, they don't even see it, and it hits them in the head. So they throw like you said, playing catch. They throw the ball to the seller, and the seller pitches it back, and they don't see it, and it whacks them in the head and knocks them out.
Well, one of the first things I noticed about working with you, when people that you're trying to train, including me, but I saw it in other people, when they heard you maybe on a live call or a recording of you talking to somebody, they're like, Bill, it's so weird. It sounds like you're talking to the guy. Because, you have this image of a lawyer, a banker, an insurance guy, and they're all got suits on, and they're all friggin' formal, and they're like in control, and you have to bow down to them, and you have to answer their questions, and they're this big professional, and they're all serious and stuff, and there you are talking to people, and everyone who listens to you is like, well, what do you?
It's too tough. Yeah, that was too easy. I didn't realize it was so easy. That's what I hear all the time. I didn't realize it was so easy. It's so casual. And so
casual.
What is the word? Colloquial.
Colloquial.
That's the word.
It's which is how we talk to each other. How we talk to each other.
Colloquial means the native way they communicate in that tribe, right? Mm-hmm. So like they might have their own. Like every family has their own colloquial language because they talk to one another. Like I call my sister. Hey, sister, what's up? That's colloquial. It's pertains to our family. It's a local communication. It's a local way to communicate, right? So you want to be colloquial with them. You want to talk the way they talk. Now you don't fake, but you want to go down. You want to be in their reality, right? So I keep it casual, but I ask questions. Right? I ask a lot of questions. I ask questions on the answers, not on my questions.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to actually see what they're seeing in their head. I'm trying to paint a picture in my mind of the picture they have in their mind.
Yeah.
So when it's a little fuzzy, I ask a question. Right? Number 2, the monthly payment. Now, I've recently recognized that this is a major confusion, Peter.
Really?
Yeah. Now, this is always a confusing point for rookies. Here is why. A, you could talk about owner financing or lease option, etc. Mostly how much the seller will allow you to pay. That's the most common one. So we talk about free and clear all the time because we could do owner financing, and we have this thing called the MAP, M-A-P, like a roadmap formula, which is maximum allowable payment.
Yep.
So we have that formula. We take the after renovated value or the income of the house, whatever we think we can get for income, right? And we usually do that off of a mortgage calculator, by the way. So if it's a $300,000 house, we put $300,000 in a mortgage calculator, and we'll put the current interest, we'll say 4% in there, times 30 years. We'll add the tax and I was going to say tax and registration, the tax and the insurance, and then add $200 to it, and that's our income.
That's that's the payment from the buyer.
That's the income from the buyer. Now, I say income because you could have a house that has a 3-car garage and you could rent a garage. You could have a house where you could, which by the way, I saw on TV the other day, there's this new neighborhood app out there where people can connect up. So if you have a boat, you can go on there and you want to park the boat, and somebody will let you park the boat in their driveway. There's a new app that will allow you to do that. So there's other ways that, like with multifamilies, there's washer and dryers, there's all different ways of having income. You can have a storefront. I mean, there's all different ways of income. So that's why I do income and I don't do just rent, because there's multiple ways of getting income from many properties. And in Wallingford is, in Meriden, Connecticut, there are a lot of houses that they're old, either Italian or Polish or some heritage like that, where they build a house and then underneath they put a store. They turn the garage into a storefront, and they have some store that they ran for 30 or 50 years.
Really?
There's a lot of that in Meriden, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so my point is, you take the income, you multiply it by 85% because you want a 15% vacancy factor and or repairs, which is not enough for repairs, but it's a number. And then you subtract the taxes, the insurance, and any other fees like HOA fees. That's the maximum allowable payment. I came up with that because on free and clear houses, you can't offer too much of a payment. Because if you do, you won't make any cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay. So in owner financing, I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but in owner financing, the payment is important. We do the MAP formula. We usually do this, and we usually do this in like owner free and clear houses, a lot of equity, that kind of stuff, right? Which brings me to B. So that's one type of a payment we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the lease. It's they're going to take monthly payments, right? They are going to receive monthly payments instead of cash.
Sure.
It could be their mortgage payment or a bank loan, like in subject 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we're going to take a property over and there's a bank loan and we're going to take over the mortgage, subject 2 means you're taking over the existing promises the seller made to the lender, and you're going to keep those promises. So you're taking over the property subject to their mortgage commitments.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So in this case, the payment might be not what they're going to accept, but what you have to pay to keep the property.
Oh, sure.
Right? Or if it's a cash deal, which is C, it could be your hard money lender payments.
Right.
So the point is that you're trying to discover how much you have to pay monthly for this property. Okay? Either way, this number will help you determine which direction to start working the deal.
Mm.
Right? So if I have a hard money lender that will only give me money for 1 year, what kind of a deal strategy do I have? How am I going to sell this property? See, what I'm trying to get to here is by doing this discovery and by doing these 4 pieces of information, you are going to find out by default which deal you can do. The offer will pop off the page like an animated cartoon. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've seen you go back and forth a few times. It doesn't pop up right away necessarily. You have to chew it over. A little bit of a process of elimination, one at a time.
Right. Right. But the point is that you don't have to be clever at deal structuring. The deal structuring does itself if you just ask these 4 questions and do a good job of the discovery of the seller's answers. That is the pure simplicity of it. And I don't even need to mean you need to be a Columbo and have, all these little secret tricks on how you're going to extract information. I just mean you just need to be observant. want to know what I think, Peter? I think the biggest unspoken problem with rookies
Really?
is not being in present time when they have the attention of their seller.
Wow.
They're not thinking about what the seller's doing. They're not there just being there comfortably, confronting the seller and listening to the seller. They're thinking about their situation. They're thinking about what they have to say. They're thinking about how am I going to sell this house? Am I making a mistake? They're thinking about them too much
Mm-hmm.
and not paying attention to the seller. And if you could figure that out in your own world, be comfortable and just be there and be relaxed and listen to what they say, the seller will tell you how to buy this house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did it yesterday, right? We were in a house yesterday. Sunday morning, you had us out in the house.
Yep.
Guy owes almost 100 properties, and he didn't give us a number, but he sure did lay out what he's thinking,
Mm-hmm.
right? And oh yeah, by the way, just in case you're curious, if you think you can't do owner financing, this guy told us point blank he'd be most interested in doing owner financing because out of his almost 100 houses that he had, he's never used the bank once. Gee, I wonder where we heard that before. And he tells Peter a story about how his first house, he sat in the guy's backyard for 6 months trying to convince him how he should do owner financing. And he would go there while the guy was painting his house and try to convince him and had paperwork and everything. And he did it. He bought the house. And then you said he bought 17 houses after that, right?
From that same guy. So then more later. So it's worth the effort if you got the right guy.
Right. So number one, we have price. Number two, we have payment. Now, if they're not going to receive a payment, I'm going to come back to that, okay? But you're going to ask them. So it goes like this. Let's do it. So Peter, you're looking for $200,000 for the house. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Good. So what were you planning on doing with the money once you got it?
Jeez, I wasn't ready for that one.
Well, let me ask you this. How much were you expecting to walk away with?
Oh, well, there's closing costs and all that, so it's free and clear. So I'm thinking like 185, 190, I hope.
Okay, so if you had the 185 in your pocket, what would you do with it?
Oh, well, I'd probably just go find a way to invest it, save it.
Okay, good. So let's stop right there. So first of all, he's not very motivated. And second of all, I need to educate him on how he can keep his $185,000 in that house and keep making money without having landlord obligations.
Mm-hmm.
He just told me how to make him an offer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Peter, if I were to give you your $185,000, would you consider, or more, would you consider taking monthly payments?
Monthly payments.
So I can pay you off?
Yeah, I guess so.
See, that's it. If he says no, your next question. So say no. So Peter, would you consider taking $185,000 for monthly payments?
Every month, I'd be glad to, because that's a lot of money. $185 a month. Say it again, Bill. You just offered me $185 a month. Go ahead, do it again.
So if I were to give you $185,000 for monthly, if I were to give you $185,000 and make monthly payments, would you consider that?
Not really. No.
Okay. All right, no problem. So what's the best you think you can do?
As far as the price?
Yeah, because if I got to pay cash, there's a lot of expense to it, and I need a pretty good sized discount to make that work.
Well, I would take $185 cash.
Right, but I can't do that. That's too much for me.
Oh. Well, then $175.
Yeah. So just so you have an idea, this is what I do, and then I go into my thing, right? Yeah. But here's the point: I went from price to payments. And I'm still doing discovery on payments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now if you're not going to give me payments, then I need to get a discount.
Right.
And 175 is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So let's go back to number 3. So we got price, we got payments. Now don't get stuck on trying to convince them that they have to make payments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 3 is duration of payments.
I mean, would you jump ahead on the duration and not have the payment
Now,
figured out?
I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So let's just stick with the payments because we're almost coming to the end here, and I want to get everything done. So
Yeah.
And I keep Q&A and I keep going back and forth. So duration of payments. Now, this plants us into deal structuring mentally. If the private lender only gives us a year, then we lean to rehab retail.
Right.
If the lender will give you 10 years for a note, you can sell with a lease option for money now, money monthly, money later.
Mm-hmm.
So the duration helps you with what deal structure you're going to have. So when we're getting the price and we're getting the payment, the duration helps you.
Oh yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
So like we were doing a deal the other day and we were talking about it and the guy wanted top dollar and I'm like, okay, well, how much are the payments? Because if we can cash flow on the payments, we may give him top dollar for the price because there's 2 ways to make money in real estate. That's cash flow and equity.
Yep.
So if they want to be a pig or a glutton with the equity and they want it all, that's fine. Just give me good cash flow. So where I might normally pay on my MAP formula, my MAP, like a roadmap formula, right? If I were to pay, my MAP formula says I can pay $1,000 a month and he wants all the equity, I'll be like, okay, I can pay $700 a month and make an extra $300, which is $3,600 a year times 5 years or 10 years is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Adds
Number 4 is the down payment money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think of this. If the seller says they don't want to do payments, you will then hunt for your best discount or lowest price the seller will do. If he wants $150 all in cash, this is what you need for a down payment.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's true. That is the payment.
And what the math or the deal structure, and what math or deal structure to use. If the seller will let you make monthly payments, but wants a deposit, which is down payment money, it just has to be 50%, less than 50% of 3 to 5% of what you would get from the buyer that's when they're buying from you. So we get a deposit from our buyer, 3 to 5%, because that's an FHA approval amount. So you want to make sure you have a minimum of 3%. I try to always go for 5%. I'll go for 5%. I'll want 5% total. I'll take 3% now and then put them on a down payment program for 2 years, a down payment assistance. So they'll pay extra money above their rent to get them up to the 5%.
Yep.
Okay, whole nother podcast on that. But if you take, so let's say the deposit is $6,000 in a $100,000 house.
Right.
Right. You can only offer your seller 50% of that money.
Right.
So you can't give the seller more than $3,000 for deposit. That's the rule of thumb. Now you could bend your rules and stuff like that, but that's the general rule. If you got a $200,000 house and you're going to get $10,000, right, then you can offer the seller up to $5,000. And you tell the seller, one of the ways I make money, one of my profit centers, which is my main profit center, because you got money now, money monthly, money later, is the difference between what I collect from my buyer as a deposit and what I give to you as a down payment.
Yeah.
That spread in between is one of my profit centers, so I can't give you that much money. And they always say, well, I can't take $10,000. Okay, and then we blow the deal. Or they're like, okay, well, I guess and then you continue on. But they understand it. It's not some trick.
Yeah, but one of the questions I have seen you use is, do you need the money for something particular? Yeah, I got to move. Oh, how much you need to move? All right, well, I'll give you money to move. Something like that.
Right.
Or if it's like, I need $20,000 for my daughter's wedding, like, well, okay, that's not the story. Yeah.
All right. So here's the most important point. Now we went through that little drill and we kind of that was not the point of today's podcast, except to prove the point of today's podcast.
Okay.
Here's the most important point. While you are talking to a seller, you need price, payment, amount, duration, and deposit if asked for it.
If
Your
asked,
script,
yeah, they don't always ask.
yeah, the deposits. I never. Well,
They never offered.
Ron LeGrand says, they say, how much can you give me for a deposit? He says, well, most of our deals are 0. How close can you get to that? Good old
How
Ron
close
LeGrand.
can you get to 0?
Yeah. So your scripts or questions fall between the lines of price, payment, duration, and down payment. And I call this is a new thing. It's called double P, double D.
Okay.
Price, payment, right? Duration and down payment.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, so anyways.
Yeah, the old PPDD. Sure.
Yeah. So your discovery works like this. Okay, you are asking $150,000. How did you come up with that number? Like we just did.
Mm-hmm.
We did that earlier, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
how much do you figure you will walk away with? Right? These are just common script questions. These are the script questions that you'll use over and over and over again, right? And you don't need to go learn them. You could simply just put them in a bullet on a piece of paper while you're talking to them, like on a clipboard, or like, if you're talking to them on the phone just in front of you. You don't need to use them in a sequence. So the sequence, which I'm really trying to make this really simple, the sequence is get the price, get the payment, get the duration of the payment, and deposit money or down payment money if they ask for it. Those are the only 4 things you need to get in a phone conversation. You can go sideways, frontwards, backwards, upside down, go South Pole, North Pole, Alaska, Florida. I don't care where you go in the conversation. You could talk to them for 3 hours as long as you get those 4 things. And why do we get those 4 things? Number 1, when you send them a memorandum, those are the 4 key points that you need to talk about. Like, I promise to give you this much money for a price. I promise to pay this much money for a payment. I promise to make the payments for this amount of time. And sometimes that's it. And then if they say, if you talked about it, I also promise to give you this much money at the closing for down payment.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only 4 things you need. Even if you wrote a purchase and sales contract and it's a full purchase, that's what the closing agent or the attorney needs to put the deal together.
Sure. When are you closing? That's duration.
Right.
Yeah.
So, let me see here. All right. See, it's the responses or the answers they give you that count. Because now I'm taking away all the other stuff. Because I have scripts. Believe me, I have scripts. And I've got it down to just 4 questions that you need to worry about. Now, in between the questions, in between price and payment, you're going to want to be curious, curious like curious the cat, right? You want to go in there and you want to ask questions like, how did you, so the entire viewpoint, to end off on this point, the entire viewpoint that you should have with a seller, the entire thing that should keep you the most quizzical and the most performing in your questions are, this guy's had this house for 10 years. Why did all of a sudden today he want to decide to sell it?
Mm-hmm.
Or they've had this house for 3 months. Why are they selling it all of a sudden?
Oh.
Like a rehabber.
Sure.
Why are they selling this house? Well, with a rehabber, they're looking to make money. So are they going to make the most amount of money off of a guy like me? Well, if they let me have payments, yeah.
Yeah, I've had people offer that. I would never think, you borrow a bunch of money, you renovate it, you need to pay everybody back. Like, you usually want to do it quickly. But I've had people say, yeah, I would do that. Like, wow.
Well, think of a renovator. I mean, what's the reason why a renovator is renovating? They want to make a chunk of dough, right? So if they're going to make 20, if they say they over renovated it and they thought they were going to make 25,000, and now they're looking at, well, I'm only going to make $5,000, and then you come along and make payments and tell them over the course of 2 years or 3 years you can make $25,000, they'll be like, oh yeah.
In that case, they'd bail them out, especially
right.
if you can overpay a little bit if you add time and terms to it.
Right. So So there are you have to get this discovery stage in between the questions and find out what's motivating them, right? Like why always keep in your mind, why are they all of a sudden selling this property now? There's something that triggered that, because let's face it, Peter, it's not easy to sell a house.
No.
Right? It's kind of like you got a garage full of stuff like I have right now, right? And I have this big, beautiful conference table that's in the middle of my garage with 6 chairs, and I have to put it on Marketplace and try to sell it. And I haven't done it for a month because it's like I need a weekend or a couple days where I can actually pay attention to all the text that I'm going to get from Messenger.
Yep.
It's like it's a process for me to like sell this thing for $100 or even give it away for free. It's a process. So I have to go through that process. So when somebody's selling a house, it's work. It's above and beyond their lifestyle. So what reward are they going to get out of doing all this work? Why are they doing this now? And the reward could be they no longer have the pressure of making the payments. The reward could be as simple as I don't want to cut the grass anymore. The reward could be as simple as I'm going to make $100,000. The reward could be something like my wife will stop pestering me about it. I mean, there are so many of them you don't know. So you have to think to yourself that way. But if you stick your main script to price, monthly payments, duration, and deposit money or down payment, if they talk about it, you can elicit enough information from them to be able to ask the script questions.
Yep.
And that's the magic. So hopefully I made this easy for you and our listeners. Hopefully it made a lot of sense and I didn't confuse you with trying it a different way.
You know what I like about it is the way you're talking about it, you can limit the discovery stage or steps to one topic at a time. Instead of trying to discover all these things, why and when and who and what happened, just like the discovery on the price, discovery on the terms, how long they can wait. And, so that kind of makes it easier too, just to focus on one thing at a time and ask a few questions.
Well, the most important thing is that what I'm trying to make here, and you need to go practice. We're 7 minutes past the hour. So the most important thing that I'm trying to force upon you is if you do what I'm talking about, it will become a natural conversation. Yeah. Because one leads into the other.
Yeah, you're at least asking questions about one thing, the price or the terms.
Right.
So it makes sense.
But more importantly, you're building rapport. You build rapport with the house and the transaction. You don't get on there and start talking about your kids, and the people don't want to hear that shit.
No, but even asking a bunch of questions before you start talking about the sale, people want to sell the house. They don't want to ask questions about things like, so why are you selling and all those. They didn't even want to ask those type of things. But if you ask them in terms of the prices of the 4 things you just mentioned, at least it connects to something. And it feels more natural.
That's what I was talking about, the non sequitur earlier.
Yeah, so it connects to something, not just, why is this guy asking all these questions? So I like that about it.
Yeah, good. All right, good. So go in the chat or go in the description, wherever you're watching us or listening to us. There is a link in there. I put scripts in there. I put calculators in there. I even put an offer pack in there. So you can make
that offer pack is good, folks.
So it's for free. I've been selling them for a couple $100, but you can go get that now in this podcast. So go do that. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us if you're on Facebook or YouTube or even in the platform you're listening to us, because that's our exchange for helping you so much. We like those. We like comments, subscriptions, and reviews. That's how you could pay us back for helping you today. Okay? So over and out. We'll talk to you in podcast number 308. Go get a deal.